A storm is gathering. No, a storm has just broken over all of us, and it is a hurricane of fire and fury, unleashed not by a nation, but by one man. Donald Trump has just declared a two-front war, a war without soldiers or tanks, but a war that could be far more devastating. His targets? The entire European Union, centered in Brussels, and the newly elected government of Mexico, led by President Claudia Sheinbaum. The threat, delivered just moments ago and now echoing across every trading floor and every government building on the planet, was chillingly simple. Everyone will pay a heavy price. This is not a drill. This is not political theater. This is the first shot in a battle for the future of the global economy, and it happened today, November 16, 2025. In this video, you will learn not just what happened, but why it happened and what it truly means. We are going to break down the two separate threats, one aimed at the heart of Europe, the other at America's own neighbor. We will expose how these are not isolated tantrums, but two pincers of a single, coordinated, and terrifyingly ambitious strategy. And we will connect the dots to show you the much larger game being played, a game designed to shatter alliances, cripple economies, and remake the world in one man's image. Watch until the end, because the final part of this analysis will reveal the big picture of a new American empire Trump is trying to build on the ashes of the old world order. Welcome to this video where we explore the truth behind the headlines. The mainstream media will give you the sound bites, the official statements, the carefully worded denials. Here, we go deeper. We expose the strategy, the motives, and the inevitable consequences. If you want to get ahead of the headlines and understand the world that is being built around you right now, make sure to subscribe and turn on all notifications. You will not want to miss what comes next. So, how did we get here? How did we wake up this morning to a world on the brink of an unprecedented economic conflict? To understand today's earthquake, you have to understand the tremors that came before it. Ever since Donald Trump's return to the White House was confirmed, the world has been holding its breath. His first term was a preview, a dress rehearsal. This time, there are no restraints. The doctrine is America first, but a version of it supercharged with vengeance and a clear-eyed vision of domination. For the past year, we have watched the pieces being moved into place. On one side of the board, you have the European Union. For decades, they lived comfortably under the American security umbrella, pretending to be a unified power while still relying on Washington for the big decisions. But slowly, timidly, they began talking about something called strategic autonomy. It was a fancy way of saying they wanted to make their own decisions, especially on trade and technology, without asking for permission from the United States. They started making deals with China, investing in their own defense, and trying to strengthen the euro as a rival to the almighty dollar. They thought they could have it both ways, be a partner to the United States when it was convenient, and a competitor when it was profitable. They have just received a brutal wake-up call that those days are over. On the other side of the board, you have Mexico. Under President Claudia Sheinbaum, Mexico began to chart a new course. For a century, Mexico has been in America's shadow, its economy and politics inextricably linked, for better or for worse, mostly for worse. It has been a source of cheap labor and a dumping ground for American goods, its foreign policy decisions always made with one eye on the reaction from its powerful northern neighbor. But Sheinbaum's government started to change that. Quietly at first, then more boldly, they began to look elsewhere. They strengthened ties with Latin American countries. They welcomed massive investment from China in ports and railways. And, most critically, they began deep, substantial negotiations with the European Union. They were seeking to break free from dependency, to build a future where Mexico was not just America's backyard, but a sovereign player on the world stage. This is the context: a European Union dreaming of independence, a Mexico striving for sovereignty, and a newly empowered Donald Trump in Washington, who sees both of these movements not as the natural evolution of nations, but as a direct, personal, and intolerable challenge to American power. He sees a world slipping from his grasp, and today he decided to tighten his fist. Let's dissect the first front of this war, the attack on Brussels. What exactly did Trump threaten? According to the leaked reports from his transition team, confirmed by sources in Washington, the plan is to impose what is being called a total retaliation tariff. We are not talking about the 10 or 25% tariffs from his first term. The number being floated is a staggering 200%, a 200% tax on every European car from Mercedes-Benz to Volkswagen that enters an American port, a 200% tax on French wine and Italian cheese, a 200% tax on German machinery and Spanish olive oil. An action like this is not a trade adjustment. It is economic warfare. It is a declaration that the European export-driven economy, particularly Germany's, will be brought to its knees. The goal is simple and brutal: to trigger a deep recession in Europe, to crash their industries, create mass unemployment, and cause so much internal political pain that the European Union either fractures or comes crawling back to Washington, begging for a deal. But why now? What was the final trigger? The answer is the so-called EU-Mexico Strategic Partnership Act. This was a landmark deal, decades in the making, that was set to be signed next month. It was more than a trade deal. It was a pact for mutual investment in green technology, in digital infrastructure, and, most importantly, in the mining and processing of critical minerals like lithium, which Mexico has in abundance. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, just last week in a speech, hailed the deal as the cornerstone of a new, multipolar world, a world where like-minded partners build resilient supply chains free from coercion. Do you see the language? Multipolar world. Free from coercion. These were direct shots at Washington and Beijing. For Europe, this deal was their declaration of independence. It was a way to secure the resources for their green transition without relying on China, and to build a powerful economic bloc with Latin America, reducing their dependence on the volatile American market. They saw it as a brilliant strategic move. Trump saw it as an act of betrayal. He saw it as the European Union actively helping Mexico, a country in America's own hemisphere, to escape from its economic orbit. In his eyes, Europe was interfering in his backyard. And here you see the monumental hypocrisy of the West, the hypocrisy we have been pointing out for years. For 70 years, the United States encouraged, funded, and demanded European integration. Why? Because a united Western Europe was a useful tool, a wall against the Soviet Union. The alliance was based on a common enemy. But what happens when that enemy is gone and your ally becomes your economic competitor? Suddenly, that unity is a problem. Suddenly, their independent actions are seen as interference. Trump's threat is a message not just to Brussels, but to all of America's so-called allies, from Tokyo to Seoul to Canberra. You are with us, under our rules, or you are against us. There is no middle ground. There is no such thing as an equal partner. He is unilaterally ending the post-World War II order, where America pretended to be the benevolent leader of the free world. Today, the mask has been ripped off completely. America is the leader, period. And everyone else will follow, or they will be punished. Now, let's turn to the second front of this war, the one much closer to home, the assault on Mexico and President Claudia Sheinbaum. If the threat to Europe was a cannon blast from across the ocean, the threat to Mexico is a dagger pointed directly at its throat. The message to Sheinbaum is far more personal and far more dangerous. The economic threats are just the beginning. Trump is reportedly planning to immediately trigger a full review of the USMCA, the trade deal that replaced NAFTA, with the explicit goal of tearing it up. This would be catastrophic for the Mexican economy, which sends over 80% of its exports to the United States. Think about that. With the stroke of a pen, he could sever the main artery of Mexican commerce. But it goes further. There is talk of a complete shutdown of the U.S.-Mexico border, not just to people, but to all commercial traffic, under the pretext of a national security emergency. This would halt countless factories and supply chains on both sides of the border in a matter of hours, And then there is the cruelest weapon of all: remittances. The billions of dollars that Mexican workers in the United States send home to their families every year. This money is a lifeline for millions of people and a huge source of foreign currency for the Mexican government. Trump's team is now drafting plans to tax or even block these transfers, weaponizing the livelihoods of ordinary families to exert maximum political pressure on the Mexican state. It's a move of breathtaking cruelty, designed to turn the Mexican people against their own government. So why this scorched earth approach against a neighbor? The reason is that President Sheinbaum committed two unforgivable sins in Trump's eyes. First, she sought economic sovereignty. Her government passed a law declaring Mexico's vast lithium deposits a national strategic resource, meaning they would be controlled by the state, not handed over to foreign, specifically American corporations for exploitation. Lithium, as you know, is the white gold of the 21st century, essential for the batteries in electric vehicles and all our electronics. By nationalizing it, Sheinbaum was saying, Mexico's resources will benefit the Mexican people first. Her second sin was pursuing an independent foreign policy. Her government refused to bow to American pressure to condemn certain countries. She deepened ties with Brazil and other left-leaning governments in Latin America, creating a bloc that was not automatically aligned with Washington. And, of course, there was the deal with the European Union. By inviting another global power to have a major economic presence in Mexico, she directly challenged the oldest and most sacred principle of American foreign policy: the Monroe Doctrine. You may have heard of the Monroe Doctrine, but let's be very clear about what it really is. It was a declaration made 200 years ago that the United States considers the entire Western Hemisphere, all of North and South America, to be its exclusive sphere of influence. It was a keep-out sign directed at the old European colonial powers. But over time, it became a justification for the United States to interfere whenever and wherever it wanted in Latin America, toppling governments, installing dictators, and controlling economies for its own benefit. Sheinbaum's deal with the EU was, in Trump's view, a European invasion of his sphere of influence. He sees Mexico not as a sovereign country, but as American territory in all but name. Her attempts at independence are seen as an insurrection, and he is moving to crush it with overwhelming force. This isn't a trade dispute, this is a reassertion of empire. And now we arrive at the most crucial part of this entire story, the part that you will not hear from anyone else. These two attacks, one on Brussels and one on Mexico City, are not separate events. They are not a coincidence. This is a brilliantly simple and brutally effective coordinated strategy. It is a classic pincer movement designed to achieve a single, overarching goal. Think about it. What is the biggest threat to Trump's plan to make Mexico a compliant vassal state once again? It is the possibility that Mexico could find a powerful friend, a rich ally to help it withstand the American pressure. And who is the only potential ally big enough, rich enough, and technologically advanced enough to play that role? The European Union. The EU-Mexico deal was Mexico's escape route. It was a lifeline that would have diversified its economy, given it new markets, and provided it with European political backing on the world stage. So, what does Trump do? He attacks both at the exact same time. By threatening Europe with economic oblivion, he ensures that the EU will be completely consumed with its own internal crisis. The Germans will be panicking about their car industry. The French will be scrambling to save their luxury goods market. The Italians and Spanish will be facing a collapse in their agricultural exports. They will be so busy fighting for their own survival, so divided on how to respond to Trump's aggression, that they will have absolutely no time, no resources, and no political will to help Mexico. He severs the lifeline before Mexico can even grab onto it. He isolates his victim, and by making a brutal example of Mexico, he sends a crystal-clear message to the Europeans and to the rest of the world. The message is, see what happens when you try to operate in my hemisphere. See what happens when you try to challenge my authority? This is the price you will pay. He uses the attack on Mexico to terrorize Europe, and he uses the attack on Europe to paralyze Mexico's only potential rescuer. It is a two-front war where each front reinforces the other. This is the bigger plan. It is a strategy to build a new kind of wall around the Americas. Not just a physical wall on the border, but a giant economic and political fortress. Inside this fortress, the United States is the undisputed king, and the other countries, from Canada down to Argentina, are its subjects. Their resources are America's resources. Their markets are America's markets. Their foreign policy is America's foreign policy. And any outside power, whether it is Europe or China, that tries to establish a meaningful presence inside this fortress will be met with overwhelming force. He is not just trying to win a trade dispute, he is trying to roll back the clock 200 years and fully reimpose the Monroe Doctrine for the 21st century, creating a self-contained American empire, a fortress America, free from foreign competition and influence. The shockwaves from today's declaration are already spreading across the globe, creating a tsunami of fear and uncertainty. This is not just a problem for Europe and Mexico. This affects everyone. Let's consider the ripple effects. First, look at China. On the surface, Beijing might be smiling. Its two biggest rivals, the United States and the European Union, are about to enter a bitter and destructive economic civil war. A divided West is a weaker West, which certainly plays into China's long-term strategy. They will see opportunities to expand their influence in a chaotic Europe and a desperate Latin America. Mexico will almost certainly turn to Beijing for help, and China will be happy to provide loans and investment, but at a very high price, pulling Mexico into its own orbit of debt and dependency. But China is also nervous. They are watching the sheer aggression of Trump's tactics and know that if he is willing to do this to a supposed ally like the EU, he will have no hesitation in doing the same, or worse to them when the time is right. What about the rest of the world? Countries in South America like Brazil and Argentina are watching in horror. They see what is happening to Mexico and understand that they could be next. Any leader who steps out of line, who gets too close to China, who tries to nationalize their own resources, will face the same wrath. The message is clear: submit or be crushed. Nations in Asia that depend on both American and European markets, like Japan and South Korea, are caught in an impossible position. They are being forced to choose a side in a fight they want no part of. The entire system of global trade, already fragile, is now facing a systemic breakdown. Supply chains will be redrawn, not based on efficiency, but on political allegiance. The risk of a deep global recession has just skyrocketed. This is an earthquake that will shake every economy on the planet. So, how are the targets of this attack reacting, and what can they possibly do? The reaction from Brussels has so far been a mixture of shock, disbelief, and bluster. We are hearing tough talk from French officials in Paris about European sovereignty and the need for firm countermeasures. They are threatening their own retaliatory tariffs on American goods. But behind the scenes, there is panic. The German industrial lobby is terrified. They know their entire economic model is on the line. The EU is famously slow and divided. Getting all 27 member states to agree on a unified, painful response will be a monumental challenge. Trump knows this. He is counting on their division. He believes that, when push comes to shove, their instinct for self-preservation will override any sense of solidarity, and they will break ranks. The great European project is facing its greatest ever test. In Mexico City, the mood is one of defiant anger. We can expect President Sheinbaum to make a powerful, nationalistic speech in the coming hours. She will appeal to Mexican pride, to the history of resisting American intervention. She will call for solidarity from Latin America and reach out to other world powers. But defiance is one thing. Survival is another. Mexico is in an incredibly vulnerable position. The economic weapons Trump is threatening to use are devastating. Can Mexico's economy survive a full border shutdown and the loss of the American market, even for a few months? It is highly doubtful. Sheinbaum is in a terrible bind. If she caves to Trump's demands, her presidency is over, and Mexico's sovereignty is a fiction. If she resists, she risks plunging her country into a catastrophic economic crisis. What does this all mean for the future? It means we are entering a new and dangerous era. The age of globalization, of interconnected markets, and supposed international cooperation is over. It is being replaced by an age of raw power politics and ruthless economic nationalism. The world is breaking apart into hostile blocs. You will have the American bloc, a fortress America dominating its hemisphere. You will have a Chinese bloc, expanding its influence across Asia and Africa. And you may have a weakened, struggling European bloc trying desperately to remain relevant. Other nations will be forced to align with one of these powers, losing their own independence in the process. This is the new world order that is being forged in the fire of today's crisis. It is a world of walls, not bridges. A world of conflict, not cooperation. So, as we stand here today, watching the first moves in this terrifying global chess game, what are the key lessons to take away from this? First, never underestimate the seriousness of this new America First doctrine. This is not just a slogan. It is a coherent, if brutal, worldview. It is a deliberate plan to dismantle the old system and replace it with one where American power is absolute and unchallenged. Second, the idea of the Western Alliance as a family of like-minded democracies is now officially dead. When interests diverge, the United States, under this leadership, will treat its allies with the same hostility it shows its adversaries. All relationships are now purely transactional. And third, this is a fight for the future of sovereignty itself. Can a middle power like Mexico or a bloc like the EU maintain an independent path in a world dominated by superpowers? Or will everyone be forced to bend the knee to either Washington or Beijing? The outcome of this two-front war will give us the answer. The pieces are now in motion. A war has been declared. The world is holding its breath, waiting for the first real casualties. So, what do you think will happen next? Who will blink first in this high-stakes game of chicken? And what does a world look like where America treats its friends the same way it treats its enemies? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Your perspective is more important than ever. If you found this analysis insightful and want to stay ahead of the curve as this crisis unfolds, please like this video, share it with others who need to see it, and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss our next update. The story is just beginning.